Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, I put off my mask, so those who are here in front and can speak, they put off their mask. For the rest of you, I would like leave on the mask while you're inside. When we go outside, crossing the blue line, as our president said, you can take it off. So this is the biosecurity rules we're following today. All right, so my name is Reinhard Babel. To English now. My name is Reinhard Babel. I'm the head of the DAAD office, the regional office here in Bogota. We are responsible for Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela. So it's a pleasure for me to welcome you all. So, dear Vice Minister Dr. Cristancho, dear Professor Mukherjee, President of the DAAD and President of the Justus Liebig University of Gießen. I welcomed in absence our ambassador, Dr. Peter Tasek, and the representative of the German embassy, Andrea Richards. Welcome this afternoon, and of course, welcome dear alumni, and dear guests of the DAAD and friends of the DAAD, all very welcome in our new office here. I think for most of you it's the first time being here. So we're really happy that you followed our invitation to the DAAD Alumni Conference with the title Perspectives for International Academic Collaboration in Post-Pandemic Times and Changing Political Contexts. It's many firsts today. It's actually the first time that our president visits the regional office here, and it's the first time for a long time that he has not visited Colombia for his standard. It's the first time for me as the new head of this office, giving you a welcome here, and I'm really happy that I see some known faces, but I also see some new faces, because you may know that it's not the first time for me as a DAAD representative in Colombia, because I was head of the information office from 2015 to 2019. But really, it's a pleasure for me being back in Colombia now with this bigger challenge of leading the regional office. And it's also the first time that we, since our opening more or less a year ago of this regional office with the former head Martina Schulze, that we are having hosting an event here in our premises. So it's really the many firsts, as you can see. And still we are in a hybrid modus, because we only could invite a few selected ones to visit us physically here. But I won't forget that we have many invited guests who are connected virtually today. So this is also why we're speaking with microphones, and I will give you some introduction. We have microphones here for the panel later on as well. So it's important that when we discuss and speak here, that we always think doing it with the microphone, so people connected virtually in all over the region can hear us well. Okay, why did we invite you here today? As you all know, the DAAD stands for Change by Exchange. And this means we see change primarily as something worth striving for. But there are probably some of us, including myself, who feel that there have been a little too many and too drastic changes lately in this world. But of course, we see it as a challenge, and it's depending on us to turn those changes into something positive. So that's why we convoked you here today, and I'm sure that exchange and dialogue, which is what DAAD also stands for, will help to actively shape the future for this ongoing changes of our world. Therefore, the aim of this event is to offer a platform on which we can exchange our ideas, our strategies about the challenges we are facing and how we can possibly master them together. With changes, I don't only mean the pandemics. Of course, this was a disruption for all of us, but also talking about the region in Germany, we we had elections last year in Germany, in Peru, and in Ecuador, and there are upcoming elections, presidential elections here in Colombia. So there may also be political changes coming or being implemented, and that's another reason why we should talk about what the future will bring to us. And challenges not only, well, in a general sense, in higher education at universities, what are the challenges for each of you at your institution, but also, of course, regarding the international academic cooperation specifically. So we hopefully will learn from each other today as we have the opportunity to listen to different regional point of views. We invited persons from Ecuador and from Peru and from Colombia. And we hopefully will see this interesting perspectives from the German point of view and Colombian and the regional point of view, of course. And we have, this is an alumni conference, as I said at the beginning, and we are happy that today we can focus on a really special group of our alumni, which are those who participated in the so-called DS programs from the DAAD. Maybe not all of you are familiar what DS means, so it translates as Dialogue on Innovative Higher Education Strategies, and that's what that DS or DICE stands for. And it's a really interesting line because the DS training courses, they offer modular, practice-oriented training opportunities for management-level professionals from universities or higher education institutions, and especially from developing countries. So those training courses, they focus on specific challenges the university staff normally is confronted with at various levels of their organizations. They range from faculty, research, financial management to quality assurance and third-party funding acquisition, for instance. And for us, it's a really interesting question how those multipliers at the universities are confronting those challenges. So that's why we invited them here also to maybe define collaboration strategies with you from our regional office here. So 4 of those alumni from those DS programs will later discuss their approaches to international academic collaboration in our panel from a Colombian, Peruvian, and Ecuadorian perspective. And with the exchange of experiences, we aim to identify the good practices and promising approaches to this academic collaboration in, well, post-pandemic times and challenging political context. That's our title. But before this panel, which I'm really looking forward to, we will hear first a keynote from our president, Professor Mukherjee, in which he will discuss the DAAD strategies and the ones of the newly formed German government with regard to international academic and scientific collaboration in general. And especially he will address the question how the international academic cooperation may look like in the next year. So what has changed and what's going to be in our way for the next decade. And then the Vice Minister, Dr. Cristancho, from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in Colombia, and MinCiencias, will touch those topics from a Colombian point of view, from the government part. So I think we have a different perspective later on with the panel as well. And after the panel, of course, we will have the space to listen to questions from the audience, presence here or a virtual audience. And so we're happy to receive your questions. You can raise them in English directly if you want to, but you also can write us in the chat in Spanish, and later we will translate the questions into English because this is our common language for today. Okay, thanks for being here. That's to initiate the event. We want to share a short video from the German ambassador who sends his apologies for not being here today. But he taped a video, and now we will show you the video. We started here twice. It's online, but also for us to see here, we have to switch on the panel and then listen to what the ambassador Okay.
Dear Dr. Cristancho, dear Professor Mukherjee, dear Dr. Babel, ladies and gentlemen, after now more than 2 years of pandemic, we have settled into a new normal. We have all become experts in using various means of digital communication platforms for video conferences and systems for online document management. We have learned new etiquettes about how to wear masks and how not to shake hands. Our lives have become so digitalized that receiving an invitation for a meeting in person now feels like a novelty. Now, finally, even though the pandemic hasn't ended yet, we are beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel, and the question arises, what comes now? The world we are emerging into isn't the one we knew before the pandemic. This has been part of human life ever since. Things are changing. 1945, 1989, 2015, 2020, 24th of February 2022, to mention just a few of many turning points in the last decades. The last 2 years have changed our societies. Inequalities within our societies and globally have become more entrenched. Regional conflicts and violence have worsened as communication faltered. As technology seemed to make communication across borders easier, perhaps not to the same extent for our colleagues in Germany, who almost always have the worst internet connection, nationalism and populism have caused countries to look inwards. War in Europe, unimaginable only a year ago, is perhaps the starkest reminder that we are living in a global political environment that is undergoing tectonic shifts. It is in this new changed world that universities, researchers, and ministries need to find new strategies for academic collaboration. On the one hand, digitalization makes collaboration across borders easier. The development of the COVID vaccines, a truly international effort at an incredible speed, is all the proof needed that this cooperation is worthwhile. On the other hand, the close cooperation many German universities have with Russian partners and the uncertain future of these projects, as well as the thousands of Ukrainian students and researchers looking for a place to continue their study, illustrates that the academic world isn't apart from the turmoil of geopolitics. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not envy you your task to find a direction for your efforts of academic collaboration in this changed environment. I would like to thank the DAAD for providing a platform for this important discussion and wish you all an interesting and fruitful afternoon.
So one thing one seems to have de-learned, to use a neologism here, seems to be clapping the hands after 2 years of pandemic. It's a sound one can't remember actually. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, dear Ambassador Mr. Ptasek, dear Vice Minister, dear Sergio, dear DAAD alumni and alumni, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, and our host here today is Reinhard Babel. Thank you for hosting us today here for this first in-presence event at this new site of the Regional Office of DAAD. On behalf of the DAAD and of course personally, I would like to welcome you to today's DAAD Alumni Conference. Almost exactly 3 years have passed since I last visited Colombia in May 2019. At that time, I was able to announce the establishment of the new DAAD regional office in Bogota at another DAAD alumni event as part of the celebrations of the Alexander von Humboldt year back then in 2019. Certainly, none of us would have thought at the time that the inauguration of this regional office would take place virtually and that I would not be able to visit its premises until now. I'm very happy to finally be back here in Colombia and be able to personally visit this regional office and salute its staff. But we are all aware that the world has changed a lot these past years. It was already mentioned by Reinhard Babel and also His Excellency the Ambassador. and that we therefore also face completely new challenges in terms of international academic and scientific cooperation. And this is, in essence, the topic of our gathering today. These challenges relate not only to global crises, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of, say, climate change, but unfortunately also to increasing authoritarian, anti-democratic, and antagonistic tendencies worldwide, also in our Western societies. Currently, this is being painfully demonstrated to us by the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the middle of Europe that recklessly violates international law. This war is a turning point in international politics, which will certainly affect not only Europe, Asia, and the United States, but also this region here in Latin America. I'm fully aware that you all here are watching the events and chain of events in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe as well. The following question thus arises: how can we as an international scientific community overcome these challenges together? To approach this question, I would like to outline 4 important trends that I personally, that the DAAD as an institution believes will characterize the internationalization of higher education and research in the 2020s. Number 1, global mobility flows are changing. In the course of COVID-19, the international mobility of students and scientists has suffered a massive slump. However, it seems, and this is very gratifying from the point of view of a mobility agency like us, the DAAD, that this is a temporary trend, and that this is a trend that will disappear again as the pandemic subsides. All surveys, and the crisis has produced a surprising number of those surveys, show essentially the same result. The vast majority of students who had planned a stay abroad before the pandemic stuck to their plans despite the crisis. They have either postponed their stay or changed their destination. Only a very small percentage of students indicated in these studies that they would rather take an online course than study abroad. So there is no reason to believe that students and researchers will lose interest in going abroad to study, do research, complete an internship, and in meeting new people and discover different cultures. Nevertheless, it can be expected that mobility patterns will change within the next years. New mobility patterns may offer different opportunities for students who, for various reasons, have had fewer possibilities to participate in international mobility until now, until the pandemic came, until we tried out all the digital formats that were already mentioned. The DAAD promotes inclusiveness and the accessibility to these new possibilities for everyone. One other way of making international experiences accessible to many is to introduce the concept of internationalization at home more strongly into the internationalization strategies of universities. This approach is related to the huge digital step that universities are currently taking in the COVID-19 crisis. The localization in the sense of internationalization at home and digitization of international exchange and intercultural experiences can also contribute to more fairness and diversity, to more inclusiveness, and also, of course, to more sustainability in higher education. Number 2, global challenges remain. COVID-19 in its current proportions will one day be a thing of the past, thanks to the vaccines that have been developed and medical treatments that will hopefully become available soon for everybody. Other challenges will remain, and they require our attention now. The effects of climate change are becoming clearer every day. To us in Germany, since the enormous floodings in 2021, and here in Latin America, extreme weather and droughts that are endangering its rich biodiversity are no longer isolated cases. Political instability, another challenge, in individual countries at the European and international level is increasing, a global challenge that remains and gets more and more pressing. Now, above all, the war in Ukraine tragically shows that societies in many countries are being torn apart by international tensions and external threats. Therefore, it is important to define the role and responsibility of science in this new normal, because the new normal consists primarily of uncertainty, and this uncertainty will grow over the next years. In our DAAD position paper entitled Taking Increased Responsibility in a Globally Networked World, which we published in October 2021, a few months ago, we have identified 10 elements of an international academic realpolitik in the 2020s. I'm not going through these 10 points here, but I would like to recommend this paper because some of the issues that we discussed 3 months ago have become more pressing, more urgent in the light of the current events like the war in Ukraine. We appreciate that the newly formed German government follows this perspective that we outlined in this paper, attaching strategic importance to science diplomacy as part of the German foreign policy in times of increasing international instability. In fact, our new Secretary of State, Annalena Baerbock, recently, on the 18th of March, identified international academic exchange and science collaboration as an important field of action for the new, to be developed, national security strategy of the Federal Republic of Germany. The commitment to intensify German science diplomacy, maintaining academic relations also with partner countries with changing and challenging political situations, and increasing the promotion of scientific freedom aligns with the principles of DAAD. Academic cooperation can create and maintain platforms for the exchange of ideas and people and strengthen critical opinions. Here in Colombia, the DAAD has been supporting such a platform for several years by funding the German-Colombian Peace Institute, the Instituto Capaz, which serves as an example and role model for the implementation of. The DAAD has also reacted to the global challenges with new program priorities and has been funding the new Global Centers for Climate and Environment, as well as for health and pandemic prevention since last year. And it is a particular pleasure to see that with the projects Trajects, with partner universities in Colombia, and Glacier, with partners in Cuba and Mexico, 2 of these new 10 centers are also located here in Latin America. These examples show that we are determined to take responsibility and to master global challenges in joint projects and through worldwide collaboration. Number 3, cooperation, I should say collaboration, becomes more relevant than individual mobility. In the pre-COVID world, mobility was considered the basic currency of international exchange, and this holds also true for the DAAD. We counted our success from year to year by relating to the number of individual mobilities. Rising numbers of mobilities meant rising success of DAAD. Going abroad seemed to be the first option for students to develop their international profile and for researchers to work in teams with colleagues from other countries. What we are currently experiencing is nothing less than a paradigm shift. While the value of studying or doing research abroad is undisputed, the corona crisis is making it clear to us that intensive collaboration is actually at the heart of internationalization. Whether this collaboration is achieved through a physical stay abroad or other forms of cooperation, say digital formats or hybrid formats, is simply a question of methods and instruments. This means that collaboration is not necessarily linked to individual physical mobility, but exists and manifests itself in several forms, from physical over hybrid to digital. In the future, the basic unit of sustainable internationalization will no longer be physical mobility per se, but collaboration in that particular sense, including also measures and instruments of internationalization at home. This collaboration will be based on a mix of virtual collaboration, blending learning formats, physical mobility forms, intercultural experiences of other kinds, with all formats aiming to build and support long-term collaboration between individual students and researchers and a long-term network of collaborating partners worldwide. Additionally, it adapts to the aim to make international collaboration more sustainable from an ecological point of view, acknowledging that also academic mobility needs to reduce its carbon footprint wherever it is reasonable and viable. Number 4, the last trend I would like to briefly mention, institutional partnerships and networks will gain in importance. At the institutional level, universities will also continue to focus on strategic partnerships and networks. That means they will have to focus on selected partner institutions worldwide with which they develop comprehensive long-term relationships on different levels of interaction and collaboration. Strategic partnerships will be characterized by a range of joint research activities, joint courses of study, constant and intensive exchange of researchers, faculty, and students using an entire range of physical, hybrid, and digital formats. By joining forces with other institutions, these strategic partners form sustainable networks. Ideally, the collaboration will be so intense that the institutional links become, to some extent, independent of the individual relationships between individual scientists. And I'm happy to see, and now I'm speaking for a second as the president of the University of Gießen, and I'm happy to see that we have been able to establish such strategic partnerships with this kind of intensity with partners like the Universidad de Antioquia and also the National University here and the Universidad de los Andes. Ladies and gentlemen, it was already mentioned before, the motto of the DAAD has been for many years, change by exchange. Despite all the developments and changes in the internationalization of universities and our research landscape, and in the world that surrounds us, I firmly believe that this motto will remain valid for us. If we want to shape and change the world, we need partners and friends around the world with whom we build bridges to exchange ideas and people. Therefore, I'm very excited to hear how you, dear DAAD alumni, and the governments and universities in your region perceive the current challenges so that we can then enter a productive exchange that allows us to achieve our respective strategic visions and perhaps more importantly, to define our common goals in a world that is rapidly changing. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee. It's now an honor to introduce to you Dr. Sergio Cristancho, who will give a short keynote about the Colombian approach to international academic collaboration in changing times. He brought a presentation. I shortly introduce you. Dr. Sergio Cristancho is Vice Minister of Knowledge, Innovation, Productivity at the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MinCiencias of Colombia since April 2021. He's a full-time professor at the National Faculty of Public Health and was Vice Rector for Research at the Universidad de Antioquia, as you already heard. He holds a PhD in Cultural and Environmental Psychology from the University of Illinois. He has been a former professor of renowned universities in Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Guatemala, and the US. Dr. Cristancho has led and co-led numerous projects in community health and mental health, as well as intergenerational transmission of knowledge. think it's an important impact we had for the pandemics. We discussed it today, especially the mental health aspect. So it's an important issue just to make this remark. So Dr. Rustanto, an honor to have you here. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I really want to thank the invitation from the DAAD to join this special alumni meeting, and also all the JLU members here, Julia Vols, who personally made sure that I was going to attend this meeting. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the national government, and particularly of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, which, as you know, is a recently created ministry in our country, and of course aligns very well with the perspective that we are talking today about strengthening scientific collaboration, particularly at the international level. So thank you, Dr. Babel, for the introduction. Also, I want to extend my special greetings to Dr. Peter Zakev, the ambassador, who just gave us very interesting perspectives from his standpoint. Professor Dr. Joybrato Mukherjee, who is the president of DAAD and also of JLU, and of course, all the attendees who are here joining us today. I was asked to present you with a general perspective of how the Colombian STI system has changed the last few years. As you know, there have been many changes. Not only did we create a national Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, but also we developed new STI policy for the country, and also we developed a new governance structure for the country. So, of course, if we go back, I'm not gonna stand here too long, but if we go back to the National Development Plan that is currently finishing, that was the National Development Plan that had the largest, probably the biggest chapter in STI historically in Colombia. And then President Duque convened an international commission of experts, 47 researchers, the best with the best trajectories, to provide the country with a roadmap of STI development for Colombia for the next 10 to 40 years. Then, of course, we adhered to OCDE, and also the Presidency of the Republic, along with the Vice President, invited a mission of internationalization also to provide the country with some roadmap regarding international relations. Specifically in the area of STI, we created the ministry by law 2162, which was approved in December last year. The first version of it was in 2019, but it needed some adjustments to be finally approved last year. We also, by Decree 1666, we created new instances of governance, such as the National Commission of STI Policy, CONACTI, as well as the National Scientific Council, which is the CCN. And we recently launched the CONACTI maybe 10 days ago, and we're going to launch the National Scientific Committee, I think, in the next few weeks. And also, and more importantly, not only the institutionality changed, but also the policy, the STA policy. We were able to get approved the STA policy in December last year through a Compass document, which is the Compass 4069. And that policy really embraces a lot of the recommendations of the International Commission of Experts, as well as adheres really well to the Green Book that was published by Colciencias, which had the perspective of science, technology, innovation at the service of meeting the development goals, sustainable development goals. Here, this graph shows you a summarized version of the content of that policy. Probably has a lot of information, but I'll just point out some key topics here. Regarding the areas, the focus areas of the policy for the 10-year period, which is 2021 to 2031, basically 2022 to 2031, basically, it's gonna be focused on the 8 focus areas that were convened by President Duque around the International Commission of Experts, and you see those in the left-hand side. So we have convergent technology, industries 4.0, creative and cultural industries, sustainable energy, biotechnology, environment, and bioeconomy, oceans and hydrobiological resources, social sciences and human development with equity, life sciences and health, as well as basic sciences and aerospace. Within each one of those topics, of course, there are some priorities that were aligned by the International Commission of Experts, and those are published in case you are more interested in exploring more this information. They are published in the different books that emerged from the meetings of the International Commission of Experts. And also, they provide a roadmap around 5 missions. On their mission-oriented STI policy framework, they asked the country to embark upon 5 major missions, one around education, one around equity, one around water and climate change, another one around competitiveness and productiveness, and another one around bioeconomy. So that's about the topical areas, but what are the processes that are embedded into this policy? And you can see here, close to the center of that round-shaped graph there, are the 4 main axes of the policy. The first one would be what we call scientific vocations, which has to do with all the education, training, generating an interest in science for the kids, even for the children in all ages, as well as high-level training as researchers. Also, the insertion of that human capital, that human talent into the labor market and the different scientific institutions. Then we go on to the generation of knowledge axis that has to do with basic research, the generation of knowledge that is the fundamental basis for further applications of that knowledge. And you have 3 major components there. You have the research component, the infrastructure component, which we need to really work on as a country. And we have also the institutionality that, of course, is going to be led by the National Ministry of STI, but of course we'll have other instances. Then we have the third axis, which is use of knowledge. In that axis, we have everything that has to do with the application of research through adoption, transference, and innovation. So that type of research is aimed at addressing priorities established by the industry, by society, by the government. So all the basic knowledge applied to those priorities around the 8 focus areas and the 5 missions that were recommended by the International Commission of Experts. And then we have the social, what we call appropriation of knowledge, which is a concept that has gained a lot of interest in the last few years here in the country, and also has expanded into some other regions, neighboring regions, that pretty much promote the development of a culture of STI in the citizens. So not only STI for us as researchers, but also trying to approach STI to citizens so that they can make better informed decisions about the daily life, as well as help us identify what are the key issues for us to research on as researchers. And also what we call divulgación, which shouldn't be understood as a one-way process, but more as a two-way dialogue of different knowledges, one of which, of course, is scientific knowledge, which other type of knowledges that, of course, are normal in a very much diverse country such as ours that has a lot of cultures embedded into one whole country. There are some horizontal or transversal factors such as regionalization, internationalization through cooperation, social inclusion, also governance, the use of strategic information to develop and to renew the policy to make it more flexible around the different changes. Also, we have financial resources, which of course is a very important issue for our country. We acknowledge that we are not yet at the level of spending the resources that we should be spending as a country in STI. So part of this policy aims at diversifying the sources of funding as well as increasing the amount of funding through those different sources. And that's a major task that we're going to have for a few years as a country. The 3 major transversal focal areas, or like I would say approaches, would be the differential approach, given the diversity that we have, the territorial approach, because we have 33 states, of course, and the participatory approach, given that we have, of course, an interest in getting closer to the population. So that gives you a general flavor of the major axes, the lines of action. And of course, if you want more detailed description of the actions, you are invited to see the STI policy document, which is in our website, as well as in the DMP website, and has all the 59 strategic actions that are part of this policy. So we have these 7 general axes, we have 19 lines of policy, and we have 59 strategic actions. Right now, we're working on what we call the Compass de Importancia Estratégica, Strategic Importance Compass, which aims at securing future fiscal funding for strategic actions. Of these 59 actions, we chose 14 that are part of these Compass de. And if we get that approved in the next few weeks, hopefully we're gonna be able to announce that some funding, some basic funding for those activities will be ensured for the next 10 years, which is something without precedence in the STI sector. Of course, there are, I just wanted to focus a little bit on the internationalization component of the policy. We could spend time in each one of those, but I know that there's an interest in the internationalization component. And of course, here I want to highlight some of those components. The science technological cooperation in prioritized lines of action, such as the ones that I just mentioned, promoting the mobility of investigators or researchers, and also PhD stays, as well as postdoc stays. That's part of what President Mukherjee was addressing in his very nice keynote a few minutes ago. Also the inclusion of researchers into the global networks of STI. Now research is moving into large scientific collaborations frameworks, and of course we need to get ready as a country to be included into those networks. Also the exchange of good practices and experiences in cooperation through triangular cooperation, the involvement of our scientific diaspora. We know that we have a lot of great researchers worldwide, some of them in Germany, and they are contributing a lot to the development of science in those countries, but we also want them to contribute to the development of our science in Colombia, regardless that they are, there. So that's another important area. And of course, everything that has to do with science diplomacy as a way to expand the knowledge networks and knowledge collaborations, for the researchers in our country. We have some challenges, of course. The challenges are related not only to the policy framework that we are, of course, overcoming the policy, but also we need to align the international cooperation agenda of Colombia, which before was very much based on exchange of goods and services, to a more STI-oriented international policy approach. Also, we need to increase the training in science diplomacy for researchers and for the different actors that are key to this endeavor. We also need to coordinate the scientific diaspora with the Colombian academic communities. The universities are doing a great job into helping us close that gap and strengthening the role of private sector. If we want to increase really funding for the STI in the next few years, we really need to involve more the private industry, and we need to attract more private investment into science. Right now, we have a balance could be, in general terms, could be like 70% public funding and 30% private funding. We need to invert that proportion in the next few years to hopefully a 70% investment of private sector and 30% investment of the public sector, mostly devoted, of course, to the areas that the industry wouldn't fund. I think that's the model that Germany has, and it's been a very successful model, and we are learning a lot from the experiences of Germany in that area. As you can see, if we measure it by the number of current agreements, Germany is by far, the most important strategic partner of Colombia as far as scientific cooperation. Probably if we outline the map of scientific production and also project funding, probably, if it's not the first, it could be within the first 5 countries that Colombia collaborates the most with. So that really sets the standard for a longer term collaboration for a country with Germany. And that's what we want to rephrase here. We really are interested in to continue strengthening partnership with the German scientific and educational landscape, because that's going to help us as a country reach the goals that we have in our national STI policy. Also, we have had, as far as ciencias and former called ciencias concerns, we've had collaboration and agreements with institutions such as the BMBF, the DFG, Fraunhofer, Leibniz Association, Max Planck Society, the DAAD itself. And of course, we also are developing some strategic areas for our country that are related to the 8 focus areas, particularly the life and health sciences area that was very relevant now in the times of the COVID pandemic. Through the collaboration with Max Planck, for example, through the formation of 6 tandem groups in the National University and the University of Antioquia, as well as other tandem groups in other universities. In DFG, we are aiming at developing an agreement. We already have an agreement, but we're aiming at developing a joint call for proposals. 23rd, we've been discussing these with the staff at DFG. Around the topical areas of agriculture, technification, also biodiversity, as well as probably bioeconomy and climate change. So we are working on those terms. Because the microphone. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm probably just, okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. And here we have also some relationships, of course, particularly with the DAAD around some transversal areas such as training and education. So you can see that particularly our cooperation with Germany, it's not restricted to these areas, but it's focused particularly on energy, sustainable energy, biotechnology, sustainable energy being, of course, one of the major challenges nowadays, given the current geopolitics that you were mentioning earlier, President Mukherjee, and also biotechnology, aimed particularly at our mission of bioeconomy, which is taking advantage of all the huge biomass production that we have, the biodiversity and the ecosystemic services to generate social and economic development opportunities for local communities. The life sciences, of course, around not only COVID-19, but all the emerging public health threats. And in the area of basic sciences, also the collaboration with Germany is very important, given the long-standing history of basic sciences that Germany has. With DAAD, we have some ongoing projects. I'm not gonna spend too much into this slide. Here you see the summary of some of the ongoing projects that have supported a lot of beneficiaries in all the areas of knowledge, as well as in various institutions that you see there in the slide. And of course, we still have to work really hard on the training of more researchers. We have a low rate of researchers for every 1,000 population of people in the country. We need to work hard on increasing that, but not only that, into regionalizing more the training, the PhD training, and only the PhD, but other related levels of trainings that are key for the research enterprise. And of course, we have regional disparities that we need to start closing through a lot of efforts. That's why the relationship with the regional universities are so important. And we also need to integrate more the PhDs into the industry. We have one of the lowest rates of insertion of PhDs into the industry. And that's probably why we haven't gotten all the support and the funding that we need to get from the industry, because probably, there is not that realization that the inclusion of PhDs and researchers in the industry are key to promote competitiveness and productiveness. So that's, in a nutshell, a little bit of the panorama of STI for our country for the next 10 years through this national STI policy. And of course, please count on the Colombian Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation as a partner for all the initiatives that would emerge in the next few years for the German government regarding mobility, exchange, research collaboration, even around the specific areas that we have here, as well as other emerging areas that I'm sure we're gonna find in the next few years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stancho. A really interesting insight. Now we will start with the announced panel, and I would like to ask the panelists to come and sit here in the front of the audience. I will start shortly introducing our moderator, and then he will continue presenting the members of the panel. So I'm thankful and honored that Stefan Peters will be our moderator today. Stefan Peters is Chair of Peace Studies at the Justus Liebig University in Gießen and Academic Director of the Instituto Colombo Alemán para la Paz, CAPAZ, here in Bogota. He holds a PhD and habilitación in political sciences. His main research areas include peace and conflict studies, memory studies and transitional justice, development studies, education and social inequalities. He has been a visiting researcher professor in different universities in Latin America. So thank you very much, Stefan, for being with us, and the stage is yours and those of the members of the panel. Thank you.
Much, Reinhard, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if we need a mic for...
No, I forgot to explain. The mic is located on the table, so it should be able... We will have a sign if there's any problem, but it's important that the rest of us will be keep silent as most as possible, and then we should be hearing you quite well.
Okay, that's great. So once again, good afternoon, all of you, and welcome to our panel, where we have roughly an hour, perhaps a little less, in order to talk about perspectives from Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru in international academic collaborations. And actually, we are here at the regional office of the DAAD, and as you have learned, or as you already knew, this regional office works with 4 countries. And I would actually say that we have here these 4 countries present, and even Germany, and also experiences from other parts of the world, like North America, other Latin American countries, and also from Europe. So I'm glad to introduce very briefly to our panelists. So just starting with Yanitza Arias, Dr. Yanitza Arias, on my left. She is Dean of the School of Business at the Fundación Universitaria Konrad Lorenz. She's here from Colombia. There's also Maria Alejandra Maldonado, who is Director of International Relations and Cooperation at the Universidad Católica San Pablo in Peru, but you're from Venezuela as well, so we also have Venezuela present here. Let me also introduce Jimena Davila. She's also Director of International Relations, but in Quito at the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Ecuador in Quito. And last but not least, Herb Terry. He's head of the international programs and services at Ecuador's Escuela Politécnica Nacional, and also founding Secretary General of the Ecuadorian Network for the Internationalization of Higher Education. So, as you can see, we have here 4 experts of practice of academic collaborations, and also 4 persons who have been alumni of the DAAD program, which has already been explained by Reinhard. But as far as I know, you haven't been at the same years of these programs, so from different cohorts. So I would like to, basically perhaps to deepen a little bit the debate on what we have already heard. So we heard about the challenges, the new challenges of these recent years, but also heard about the importance of academic collaboration in order to confront these challenges. So what I would like in the first round, and afterwards we will hopefully have a second round, and then give the floor to the audience, both here in this room and the virtual room. So first of all, I would like you to tell us what are the lessons learned, what are good practices, what are promising approaches, but also, as far as I understand, we can learned quite a lot of, perhaps it's not failure, but things which perhaps we haven't solved yet. So if you could perhaps give us some insight from your practice, from your everyday work on the ground, and yeah, perhaps Yannick, if you would like to start.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to be giving my point of view from a business perspective, which and as a dean of a business school, some of the things that the Vice Minister just mentioned are one of the key aspects that we have been trying to really work, and that's one of the biggest challenges that we have been facing. And this was a discussion that we actually had in our latest alumni conference that we just had a few days. One of them was how do we strengthen the relationship between the private sector and the actual researchers, excuse me, because some of the critiques that we have is that as a researchers we forget in some way the problematic aspects that our regions face. So but I just wanted to pinpoint that because I celebrate a lot of that you have mentioned, especially because that brings a lot of light into what research needs to be doing to create a more not only diverse but inclusive word. That is one, and the other one, it was we also talked about a lot about diversity, equality, and inclusion, and how this is another aspect that as institutions we're facing, but we also need to start paying more attention to, since we have some problematic issues as far as the access to education, as far as access to women or a certain population that is not able to have the opportunities. And we were just talking about that with Maria Alejandra. We in the big cities, we have more opportunities that in some regions don't have. So how we as a heads of academia, we also have a big responsibility on bringing this or taking this research and education to population that don't have the opportunities that we in the big cities have.
Yes, thank you very much. And well, you already introduced that you have talked together about it. So I would like to give you the word, Maria Alejandra. You work you are the director of international relations. So what we heard just about the importance of the private sector, for instance, in internationalization. What do you think about that? But also about how to include diversity, how to include these populations who perhaps do not have or with more difficulties in order to get internationalization. Could you perhaps talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the question. And there were so many challenges that from the International Relations Office we faced, because honestly, it was impossible to fly. And in general, people thought, okay, if International Relations Office, the thing that they do is they put people to travel. I mean, if they cannot travel, there's nothing else to do. So a challenge was to change our minds and the minds of our authorities to take the pandemic as it was, sad, difficult, as an opportunity. We came up with several ideas, and it was not only in Peru. I see this as a regional uniqueness about this, taking the chance and to transform this into a positive thing. And I'm going to cite very quickly a study. There was a global survey that the International Association of University launched. And then the Peruvian Network for Higher Education Universities, we did this survey as well in Peru. And the fact is that after pandemic, the partnerships are stronger. The institutional partnerships are stronger. There are more structures, new structures to collaborate. And this was specifically relevant in Latin America, and in my opinion, it's because it's something cultural. In Latin American, we adapt. It's just cultural. We tend to adapt easily to new and different circumstances. And so that's something that I would like to just to have into the discussion. But again, challenges there were a lot, but opportunities there were more.
So thank you for this optimistic view, and also about adaptive capacity. Jimena, so I saw that you agreed with when Maria Alejandra told us about these opportunities of this special and big challenges, crisis. So it seems that you do agree, but perhaps you could also tell us about some kind of lessons learned from your everyday practice, and perhaps also some kind of challenges you can identify.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here and share all the good practices, lessons, and also those not that great days, because at the beginning of the pandemic, everything was not that great. We were freaking out, I might say. We have international students at home, we have our students abroad, and we didn't know what to do. Like, we didn't know how long the lockdown was gonna last. And the students didn't want to go back, and the international students didn't want to go back because we didn't know if the 2 weeks were gonna stay as 2 weeks, and the pandemic lasts 2 years, and we are still in a pandemic. So we have to start thinking about a plan B and a plan C, and thank you for the networks and the collaboration. And I think that usually we tend to overlook our Latin American neighbors and partners, and to share within Colombia, Peru, Chile, and Central America. Our university is a Jesuit university. And we start knocking doors and see, do you want to collaborate? Do you want to start telecollaborating and share classes, open our classes? And at the end of 2020, we were co-teaching and sharing classes, having these classes espejo, and also having a lot of different internationalization and home practices. And our students were having different ways of knowing and sharing and finding themselves that they were living and experiencing a pandemic, that they were alone, experiencing and suffering a lockdown. So it was wonderful. And our faculty were also knowing that they were also experiencing the same challenges of adapting their classes in a virtual environment. They also have to learn how to teach using a computer, using phones, because as you mentioned, not all the universities have the same resources to adapt their classes through a computer, because we have to be aware that not all the education system is fair. So the pandemic also showed us that we need to be more inclusive. And the pandemic has not been as good with everyone as we would like it to be. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And as I love to be positive, and there's a lot to learn from the pandemic, from the situation. I love networks, as I said. The pandemic led us, as a Jesuit network, to have Casa Abierta Oscal. It provided us the opportunity to have a wonderful initiative where we were able to connect 13 countries, where 20 universities organized 63 events, where more than 30,000 students connect virtually and learn from each other, participate in cultural events, academic events, and share their culture, their heritage, and their academic experience. There were a lot of challenges because we were learning to use Zoom and Teams and other ways, but we were willing to share and to learn from each other. And the biggest challenge is to keep the people motivated and to learn from those experiences. Because now, as we are taking our masks and going back to the classrooms, we are starting to refuse the use of the Zoom meetings or the virtuality environments. But I think that we have earned a lot. We are connecting more people. And sometimes we can even earn some resources while bringing experts from the other way of the planet to be part of a panel. So we have to keep this kind of both practices in place, if it means to connect more people or experts in a classroom.
Thank you very much. And so I would like to give the word to her and also your perspective. We had quite, up to now, quite positive positions, and also seeing, of course, I heard we were all freaking out at the beginning, but then we saw the possibilities, this crisis, and with all the well, horrible consequences for humans in general, but in academic collaboration, also opportunities. Would you agree? And if yes, or if not, and also could you just give us some examples from your work, also in Ecuador, but also, of course, in the international environment?
Okay, I can try to be a bit more pessimistic if you like about panel. But first of all, starting with a bit of shared optimism, I think that definitely it's been the case that a lot of options or alternatives for internationalization that were previously seen as sort of on the fringe of common practice have come to center stage, including online learning and exchange. And this has sort of propelled universities as well as governments to push through policies that had previously been on the drawing table for quite some time, that had been proposed, but were seen as complementary instead of as priorities for planning. I think that's true at all levels. And I think that has been the positive outcome of all of this. I think they're here to stay now, and that is a very good thing. In terms of challenges, I'd argue that the most major challenges are not exclusively a result of the pandemic. I think they pre-existed it, and I would cite specifically inequalities that exist within countries and between them, and diversities. International education is all about, as the DAAD motto expresses, exchange. I think the question always is, where are these exchanges taking place across which lines, vertically or horizontally, nationally and globally? And we need to pay attention to opportunities to better connect our concerns about local diversity with internationalization process. In many countries, you have a diversity, equity and inclusion office that has very little to do with the internationalization office. And that seems strange because in terms of their mission statements, they have a lot of parallels in them. But I think I would say that remains an unexplored challenge, or not explored enough. How do we connect the benefits of internationalization and more broadly of globalization to a fair exchange and integration at national levels as well. Tying in with what the Vice Minister was commenting on, the spread of knowledge throughout society depends a lot on this as well. The connection, I think with speaking in the broader context of globalization, we also see sort of burgeoning nationalistic sentiments in the world, which I think might be a reaction to a purely, or not, to what people feel has been a purely economic globalization, and a globalization that is to the benefit of an elite, national elites or global elites. And I think that that reaction, the tension between the desire to spread international understanding and cooperation and a concern about exclusion is definitely replicated in the international education context, where still it is seen by many to be international education to be something belonging to a more elite sphere or a privileged sphere, and having little to do with the needs and demands of most of the population of our countries. Definitely, this would be the case in Latin America. So, yeah, I think these are the connections that we need to work on. And going back to the conversation on COIL and its potential, or collaborative online international learning, also more commonly in Europe, international online collaboration. This is something I've worked on recently with 4 different universities in Ecuador, and I'd like to expand, is international online collaboration with a focus, a connection with local extension projects, so that there is a triangulation, which it should be noted that in terms of national strategies and national agencies working in international education in the world, the DAAD has definitely been a forerunner in looking at ways to triangulate cooperation between South-South and North-South-South, and I think, yeah, bringing that more directly into the planning, which is common in Latin America too, thanks to the strong social missions of the institutions. It's common to have within the institutions, even at the level of professorial contracts, a percentage, 30%, for example, of their time is dedicated to social extension. So these projects exist. But again, I think that going back to the point that I exemplified with the diversity offices versus the internationalization ones, we should look for bridges at this level as well. How to make use of the international learning that's occurring with those that have access to it, but extend the benefits of that learning to a wider population.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that brings us to another discussion, rather, which is, first of all, what we heard about, I think this in the first round, we heard that internationalization has changed. And that it's, of course, we also heard it in one of the keynotes, that it's more than only mobility. And that we have to connect between the internationalization at a more global, let's say, level, and bring it down to earth or down to the local level. And I think here we have kind of challenges. We also have, you mentioned some challenges regarding inequalities, diversity. I would also, and that was also part of the title of this panel, in a political changing world, or in times of changing political context. And Reinhard Babel talked about the elections, and of course, it's always times of uncertainty. That's the nice thing of democracy, that we do not know who will win. But also having in mind other challenges, which are not so much pandemic, which might be climate change, which might be migration, which might be other things like what you already mentioned, inequalities and much more. So what can really academic collaboration contribute to these issues of anti-democratic ideals and so on? What do you think? What is your impression? What is your insights from practice? What international academic collaboration can contribute in order, perhaps not to solve these problems, but in order to, to approach these challenges, and perhaps changing a little bit the interventions, starting perhaps with Maria Alejandra.
Thank you. Well, like you mentioned, I'm from Venezuela, but with due respect, I'm going to talk about the political situation in Peru and the role of the university. And I don't know if you've been familiar with the Peruvian situation, well, the political situation in general. I would say that instability is like an endemic thing, to be honest, and we have to deal with that. So what's the role? I was thinking, what's the role of the university? It is in part, of course, to form citizens, good citizens. But I have data from the SUNEDO, which is the national authority, and there was a study conducted to think about the role of the university and the perspective of the graduate students. So what's democracy for graduate students compared to high school students? And indeed, the university have a role. So in that study, a higher percentage of graduate students, they thought that democracy was something valuable. It related mostly with the respect of rights. So democracy as the respecting rights of each other and liberty or freedom to think and speak, mostly. But what I was thinking is, well, we need to continue educating citizens to better decide or to make better decisions when voting. That's the thing that's happened, that's lacking as a society in general, to find better voters. So we make better decisions as a society, and then if we make better decisions as a society and whole, we don't have riots right after election. And this is what has happened in Peru, for instance.
Thank you, and also for highlighting the role of what education, higher education also might help us in order to strengthen democracy. Riots might be after elections, but if I'm not totally wrong, in Ecuador they were also before elections in 2019. So, Jimena, perhaps if you could also think or reflect or make some reflections about these challenges, these political challenges, and what can academic and especially perhaps also international academic collaboration contribute.
Okay. Well, going back to 2019, before the pandemic started, we have biggest riots, and it was because, as I mentioned before, we usually tend to miss our own diversity. We don't understand it, and we tend not to understand with our own people. So how come we can teach about internationalization, or how come we want to see other people from other countries if we don't know who we are, where we come from? So it's important, as Herb was mentioning before, interculturality, diversity, inclusion, how we we live together. So that's why we had the riots in 2019. We wanted to change some laws, some people didn't want to change, and the riots happened. Then we changed the government, and we haven't solved this kind of situations. We keep having these clashes. The academia helped to have these dialogues. And I think it's important, the academia, to be part of these community outreach projects, because we assist to open dialogues, and there are different subjects where the students understand their roots, but I don't know how deep they understand the roots, because there's a lot of xenophobia and racism in the country. And also, I think it's important to mention the migration that's happening in Latin America. I don't know how we are approaching migration. We usually say that we are an open country, but then the public policy says another thing. We're charging visas for specific nationalities, so they stop coming to Ecuador. If you want to cross Ecuador, you have to pay for these visas, and we say we have this universal citizenship, but then we have these kind of policies, and I'm talking about the Venezuelan people. So it's contradictory what's happening. So the academia has a really important role, because as a university, we are training professionals, the better professionals for the world. So we have a really big responsibility on the curriculum that we are giving to our students, and to have this big debate on what's happening, and bringing to the table this really buzzing and issues. And also, when her was discussing about this collaborating, the COIL, the Collaborative Online International Training, where we have been aiming to do with our teachers, is not to put together faculty within the same discipline, but promote transdisciplinary collaborations, so that they complement perspectives, knowledge, and provide the students with different kind of knowledge and also visions, so they can hear from others, and not only from faculty, but from their own peers. And what has been really fruitful is to listen from Venezuela students, for instance, to know that they are not coming to our country only for economics, but from politics as well, or even from students from Nicaragua, that also are facing different kind of issues. So it's really important for us as a university to bring to them what's really happening, not for them to listen from the television, because usually the media is not telling the truth.
Thank you very much. That brings me also to the question, I understood you in a way that you think that we need this international academic collaboration also to fight against racism, xenophobic attitudes, and to get to know the persons from other contexts better, to get to know these contexts. And perhaps also for Yanitza in Colombia, what is your perception? What is your lessons learned, having in mind that Colombia is also, of course, we all know, a country that received quite a lot of migration in the last years, especially, but not only, from Venezuela. So what are your lessons learned, perhaps, regarding to these issues?
Well, a lot. And this is mainly because we tend to look differently to those who, as some of us have done, migrate from our countries. I was a migrant too, and at some point in my life, and being a migrant is not easy. And sometimes people really forget what it means to be far from your country, from your family, from that empanada that you eat at a local store. But those are things that mean a lot to you, that make you who you really are. So one of the lessons I learned is that we have that diversity of people. That's the beauty of it, because you can learn a lot from that. And also, one of the things that touched me a lot when I was in this exchange programs, and especially in this last one with the international discourse, is not only that we have the chance to migrate or to do some kind of exchange, we have a even bigger responsibility, because we can see the world or context from two different sides, right? From the being the host and being the migrant, right? So that that taught me that collaboration is really important, because through collaboration is that's one of the things that I took advantage a lot, not only because I made really good friends, and I made really good connections for research. We also had the opportunity to exchange students, teachers from different schools within the Latin American context. Also, that give us a different point of view to critique what we have and what we are doing and what we are not doing, which is also important. Sometimes we are very critical with the situation, but at some point we also have to think as universities, what are really we doing to change what's happening? And if from my perspective, the university is just a space or a space for a dialogue and for to help students to develop critical thinking. And that is, in my humble opinion, how you really change, how you really move forward with society, and make sure that all that we are that we are part of it really start making an impact in our small world.
So critical thinking, in order to have an impact, that's of course something I guess we all could agree here. What can international collaboration contribute to these issues for fostering critical thinking of students, but perhaps also of professors, and perhaps society in general?
Well, yeah, I'm glad your addition at the end of society in general, I think, connects with what has been discussed. The role of the university of higher education can come to include, in times of protest crises, and nationally or between countries as well, a mediation role. I was thinking while Amanda was discussing the example in Ecuador in 2019, the protests pre-pandemic, how the university campuses, being a sort of sacrosanct place, served a role as sanctuary, for the protesters, led by indigenous organizations, mostly coming from the rural sector to the city. It was there that they conglomerated and organized with support from students, from professors, and from what I've heard from people that were involved in helping them directly, there was a lot of that was a very positive example of intercultural learning happening, and starting to see a little bit more. In this case, both sides of the divide between urban and rural. These roles that universities can play in terms of building intercultural and global competencies and critical thinking. I think you're absolutely right. It's not just for their students. It's in forging contexts where dialogue can occur between diverse actors in society and across national borders, but also all kinds of borders. So that is the potential, and I think that we all need to continue working hard to realize it.
Yeah, if we all have to continue to work hard, we are too far away from Christmas to ask you for a wish list now, but as we have here persons from different levels in academic collaboration, so you're all at the university level, then we have here in the audience, or we had the keynotes from the Vice Minister, from the President of the DAAD, and we have other people here in the room and probably also virtually who work on different levels. So what do you think, looking ahead, what do we need in order to further strengthen academic collaboration that may be between Germany, Europe, and Latin America, but you also mentioned South-South cooperation or South-North-South or whatever. So what would we need from your perspective, and perhaps once again changing, starting with Jimena?
I think that the key to continue working is willingness. If you don't want to keep going, it's difficult because the willingness is not going to go. If you don't want to work from the beginning, it's not going to come in the path of working. For us, the successful for internationalization or even in any kind of project, if the different actors, students, faculty, staff, is not willing to collaborate, to work in any kind of project, it's very difficult for the project to see the light or to success. So it's really important, the willingness to believe it and to go out from your comfort zone. Once you are out of your comfort zone, anything can happen, even in a pandemic. And I know that when you have a group of champions, as I call you, they're going to be there for you, and they are going to give you and get you other champions to keep you going. That's what I'm sure. And also, once the students have experienced internationalization can be transformative in different ways, even when we're talking about inclusion and diversity. And let the students listen to the students. It's very important to listen from the students, listen to the faculty, give them agency. If you don't give them agency, your projects are not going to work. Not everything has to be in a box. Not everything has to be the same mold, because we live in different contexts. We don't have the same resources. We have to be innovative. Everything changes. We don't know if we're going to have another pandemic. We don't know if there's going to be something different apart from work virtually. Probably, I think that the virtual is going to stay, but the working in presence has to stay as well. So how we're going to mix the two of them? Because we have won a lot of stuff. How we're going to mix those is the question.
Yes, thank you, Jimena. And I just wanted to highlight two things. So listen to students. I think that's the experience of the students in order to learn from them. And the second one, willingness. So international academic collaboration needs people, needs human beings, and these they basically are key if we want to have success. But I'm sure we have also other things we could add to our wish list or whatever it will be at the end. So Janitza, what would you say, what do we need in order to further strengthen international academic collaboration?
Well, there's one aspect that I really think is key, and that we might have not paid a lot of, well, some are really paying a lot of attention to it, but in some areas we kind of put it apart, and it's in my wish list, it will be a climate change, one of the topics that it would have it will need to be in the spotlight. Also, sustainable leadership. I will talk about sustainable leadership in different ways, such as an inclusive education, also resources. We all have been hit by what's happening in our economies. So financial resources for students to be able to access education, to fundings for research, and also to have a flexible education models that allow students in different areas to access high quality higher education, and to be able to connect with all this international opportunities that they don't always have the chance to move or to have a physical mobility, but the virtual access is also a chance and opportunity. So I will add that to the wish list.
Yeah, I'm taking note here in order for afterwards to those. So I just put here at the wish list flexibility, but also I understood it in a way that we have, of course, and that's true for all our countries, for Germany, for actually, I guess, quite all countries of the world, very diverse kind of students, and we need higher education and higher education with a high kind of quality for all. And well, something which might seem obvious, but we need funding. So without funding, of course, it's impossible. Bert, would you like to add something to the wish list, or add something that's for what we need for successful?
Well, I'm echoing a little bit about what's already been said, I guess. I really liked how you phrased it, Jimena, the need to give agency to the students, but also to all these different actors that we've been discussing. So higher education can serve as a sort of hub, a place where ideas come together, where they're brokered as well, where knowledge is generated, but also where it's brokered through the people within the university and without. What's lacking, I think, to realize that potential more is principally context for exchange. As I said at the start, between all these different actors and across different kinds of borders, different lines. So there's a lot of concern in several countries in the region about a perceived lack of, perceived, I think it's a reality, a lack of connection between academia and industry, and society, other sectors as well. But I think what countries can do, and some are doing. I recently participated in a review study of policies and strategies being designed by different countries around the world for internationalization, and how at the national level they're supporting institutional efforts, connection between them. And as part of that, I reviewed a DAAD document, which I thought was very interesting in highlighting how even in times of political tensions and conflict, transborder collaboration can persist through scientific diplomacy, through the established partnerships, not just at the institutional level, but at the individual level of collaborators. So I think that is sort of what has been the focus, the context, as it was mentioned, the contexts that were focused on in the past have been student mobility, providing spaces for students, for some students to have these personal exchanges and experiences through which they, I thoroughly believe, do develop their intercultural understanding and critical thinking normally. But the same kinds of spaces are less frequently actively supported through policy. For example, and I'm speaking about the Latin American case now, between academia and society and industry, between academia and government, more frequent feedback in both directions would probably lead to a more cohesive effort. Again, referring to the German case, it's the DAAD and the German Rectors Conference, certainly within Germany, have supplied these spaces for constant dialogue between different actors in the international education space. And outside of Germany, like the courses that we all participated in, gave us the opportunity as well for these south-south connections that were developed. I'm still collaborating with several of my colleagues that I met during that course. So I think that is maybe in terms of what can concretely be done to realize this potential of exchange. Well, we need to make more spaces, including online space, more spaces for encounters, regular dialogues between more diverse groups, granting more diverse groups as well a voice that is heard by their counterparts in these encounters.
Yes, thank you for this this point to open up more spaces, and both between academics from different parts, but also I liked it very much, feedback in both directions between academia and politics, business, and other parts, civil society, I guess. And I would like you already to prepare your interventions, because I will now give the word to Maria Alejandra, and afterwards we'll open the floor. So, Maria Alejandra, what would be your, not the final words, but the final points for the wish list or for improving collaboration?
I think the challenge in our institutions is, in general, or as even for countries, is to decide whether to go back to normality or to move forward to something else to build up on what we have learned. So in order to do so, I think we have to take advantage of what we have in terms of technology. And what I would love is to have more spaces like this one, as Herb mentioned, to share what we know and what we can improve and the things that we are doing bad so we can learn from others, but also building capacities in managerial positions at universities. We are the results of the DAAD. And that's a beautiful, thank you. That's a beautiful, beautiful. It is. Because we usually don't understand the university. Well, of course, students are the center, and the faculty members, of course, are the center, but the staff is the ones that supports everything. So you can have students and teachers doing their thing, but if you don't have supporters of that is not going to happen. And what I love about the DAAD and this opportunity of building capacity, we didn't go to the university to be a dean or to be the director of international relations. We didn't go to the university to that. I'm a lawyer, but because of the of training like the DAAD, now I can do better my job in my institution. So please continue having this kind of projects. That's very direct. And also when talking about, I'm going to build up a little bit about what they have done. That's the beauty of being the last one, I got ideas. Talking about flexibilities. If we want to promote exchange, we really need to get the support of a government in terms of the visa process. It's not flexible, to be honest. And we are having more and more students that they postponed their travels just because the visa appointment it's super hard to get and everything. So flexibility in those terms would be very, very useful to continue doing what we do. And also, when talking about fundings, yes, of course, fundings are always a good thing, and in Latin America, we really need that. But also the social aspects of those projects in the priorities. We need to somehow meet the priorities of the, for instance, Germany and Latin America. And there are a lot of points in common to continue working and cooperating to make as what we want is to make a better world after all in whatever we're doing, but to continue working, to continue collaborating, and not to go back to normality for sure.
So thank you very much for these concrete ideas for the wish list. I just would like to open the floor in order to collect perhaps 3 or 4. 2 or 3.
I'm sorry. I just came here because I would like to ask those who want to raise the question to come up here or transmit the audio. So I also suggest while Lisa is coming front, we limit it to questions because you will have the opportunity to share later on with some drink, and they're already preparing the beer outside. So far you don't have really many questions online. So I think so. The mic is yours.
Okay. So thanks everyone for this panel. And my question is regarding the topic of knowledge management. We have talked here about scientific collaborations and also internationalization at home. Do you think maybe that internationalization at home is key for this knowledge management process that comes within scientific collaborations?
Perhaps before answering, just looking if there is a second one or.
Thank you for this invitation. My name is Christian Diaz, and I'm a postdoctoral research in industry. I want to ask you how the real tools to insert in industry, the talent in the industry, in this international process with the academia. Because in Colombia, we have a bad scenario, imagination that if you are a PhD in industry, you are a loser. Because you are out of the university and your income is not the same that you work in academic in university. The income is very, very low. You have to live with a consultancy on other kind of jobs. How are the real tools to insert, to win this value talent in the industrialization process, the internationalization? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would just pick whatever questions you would like, and yes, like try to some short answers.
I think well, there's a connection between those two questions, and in the second question, I found it interesting. I think working in higher education. We tend to think about it in terms of the academia. How can academia connect with industry? His question sort of reversed it. How can industry connect with academia? And how can the human capital, if you will, that is found in academia be spread more into industry, be used, applied more in industry? I love these questions. I'm pretty enthusiastic about answering them because this is basically the topic of my dissertation that I'm working on. So I could talk for quite a while. I'm going to try to limit myself. Yeah, so, and I also like the point raised that it's a different reality than in some developed countries, economically developed countries, where industry is perhaps where a fortune is to be made. And but in many Latin American countries, yes, it is the case that maybe staying within academia is a more lucrative and stable career choice. So again, I think I'd go back to my comment about creating contexts to make clear what are the needs in industry, foment a greater cooperation between universities and industry, and channel different kinds of resources apart from human capital between the two. I think some policies, policy work that is focused on human capital, for developing human capital for national development purposes, need to take into consideration the realities, the current realities, not the wish list realities, the current realities of different sectors in the country, of industry in the country, and plan very closely with industry, and find ways to make positions within industry, to make sure that human capital being prepared is more relevant to the needs of industry, so that they can find these stepping stones to greater development, and then also to make positions within industry more attractive.
So, anyone would like to add something from you to these questions?
Hi, I would like to add something because, as Herb was mentioned, the two questions are related. And I think in somehow, in some countries, especially in Latin America, as research, we tend to be very research focused. And we sometimes forget there is also a practitioner view that it's also critical to bring into the conversation and bring into the research, so we can give context to what we are investigating. So that's one of the key points that I see as a big gap between what we are investigating, what our research focus is, and what the industry, and that's something that they critique a lot from us.
Because we have to close, sorry.
Yeah.
You want to?
I think that's really important how we apply the results of research, because we usually do a lot of research and we don't know apply that on community outreach projects, for instance. How we articulate the three big community outreach research and training. How are we really putting together these three domains of the university? How we are answering for the needs of the community.
And I would just say, use the international relations that your institution have, because there are a lot of institutions that have resolved this problem, or at least are better than our institutions in terms of doing this triangular relationship with the industry and what the society needs. So I would say for that, the International Relations Office is, I would say, the to go to take advantage, or to put you in contact with other institutions, to learn from different realities, and then to apply, of course, to your context, your own context, because in the end, what matters is the institutional mission. Not go and copy, go learn and then apply according to your own institutional mission.
Thank you for these great closing remarks. So thank you very much.
discussion, and I'm sure we could go on, of course, there's many challenges. But time is advancing, and I think we are all quite hungry and thirsty, maybe. But before we finish, I really want to thank all of you who participated actively here, Mr. Mukherjee, Dr. Testancio, and the panelists, Stefan. Thank you so much. And I think there's lots of things we can take away. I won't try to wrap it up and put it down to 3 or 4 points, but I wanted to mention that the cooperation with the alumni, the DS alumni, and all of you and those connected online, it was a starting point to meet again after this disruption of the pandemics and other developments. And from this, we will take those points to keep working. And I think we heard a lot of suggestions, propositions we could take into action. So thanks a lot, but this is not the end of the discussion. We will keep discussing and sharing our points of view. But I will not end without giving a big thanks to my team who was organizing this event. Not many of them, but I especially want to thank to Sarina Kessler. Please stand up. Was managing everything. So thank you very much, Sarina, for this, and thanks for my team as well. And it was really a big pleasure for me hosting you today and having the delegation from the DAAD here and our president. So it's a big honor. So thank you very much, a warm applause, and thank you. And I invite you to our patio now and to have drink and keep sharing your points of views and keep on discussing. Thank you very much. Thank you.